In today's video, I'm going to take up a question that comes up over and over again in the comment section. How do we validate the background color of any element using Tosca automation? But we won't stop there. I'm also going to show you how to validate the text size and even the font family. So by the end of this video, you'll know how Tosca can not check just the functionality, but the visual accuracy too. Hi everyone, my name is Abhishek from Corporate IT Education. And if you are new here, I create hands-on tutorial on Tosca and other automation tools. So do hit like, share and subscribe and let's get started. Okay. So I'm going to use this sample website and let's say we are going to validate the color of this specific button. Okay. Now, if I want to validate the color, I'll go to Tosca Commander and I'll just scan this element. Okay. Now the first thing is that if a certain element is there and it is showing in a certain way, like a text is showing or a color is showing, it is going to be present. That data about what it is displaying is going to be present somewhere in the DOM. Okay. Now if I'll click on highlight selection, you see it is highlighting on the right section. Now let me just maximize this and move it in this side. Okay. Now if you'll go through all of these properties, you won't find anywhere where even the property says color or there is some clarification to that. Okay. Now, how do we find that? We have to click on more and we have to click on load all. Now, why all the properties are not loaded right in the start? The reason being is Tosca does not want to load everything in the first glance so that it is there in the lightweight mode. But the moment you do that, you see now I have a lot of properties to go through this. Okay. Now, before getting into which property relates to color, let me give you a little bit of idea about how developers design it. Okay. So there is something called as CSS, which is primarily used for designing the color formats. Okay. Now this is generally what is used. Now if there are any exceptions to this, then you have to understand the business requirement in that specific way and align your script, modify your script accordingly. But this is the most common thing. Okay. Now how a color is decided, because when we talk about, let's say I say green. Okay, now green could be in a lighter shade, in a darker shade, in a very light shade. So you'll see a lot of different colors people say, right? So since there are a lot of different shades, there is something called as RGB format. Okay, now we'll see that property and we'll understand it better, and it will say some number in front of it, let's say 2 5 120 or something like that. Okay, so we'll see some property like this. Now basically what happens is R says red, G says green and B says blue. Now combination of these three colors is going to basically generate the final color output which we are going to see on our screen. Okay. Now if you search with the RGB property, you'll be able to find, like if you search it on Google, you'll be able to find the exact color as well. We'll take a look into that in a moment. Now another thing is called as hex code as well. Now sometimes developers might use RGB code to convey the requirement, or sometimes they'll tell you hex code. Now hex code is nothing but it is a translation of basically the RGB code. Okay. Now we'll go with the assumption that RGB code is available to you as form of a business requirement. Now which property is going to display that? Let's go back into a scan, and here you'll be able to see something called as style underscore background hyphen color. Okay. So let me just scroll it up, and here somewhere here you'll be able to see that style background color here, this property. Okay. Now you see this is displaying in this RGB format which I was mentioning. Okay. Now our RGB format is displaying some color, but I don't know which color that is. What I can do is I can just go to Google and or any search engine. Okay, and just put that specific code and try to find out what color it is. Okay, so I can use Bing as well. Okay. Okay, anything is fine. If I'll just search, if I'll just press enter, you see it is displaying that this is the color. And if you'll take a look at this color, this is exactly the same color. And it is showing a lot of shades of this, but it is basically going here. So that is what is being achieved with the numbers what are mentioned here. Okay. And you see about a hex code as well. We'll talk about that. Okay. Now, what I'll do is I'll use this specific property to validate the background color. So it goes like style underscore background hyphen color. Okay. Now there may be exceptions to this because in some cases uh, there are certain parent elements which are driving, and combination of that basically creates the color. But you don't have to worry about this specific thing because in the interview question, because they are just trying to understand if you understand this concept. Okay, so how do I do that? I'll just save this element, I'll close this, and I will move this to the test cases. Okay, so here first thing is I'm trying to validate the background color. Okay, let me not change all of these. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll come here, I'll select the action mode as verify because I'm trying to verify the background color. Okay, now I have to click on this bluish icon, and here you might have used inner text, all these four properties or certain other properties like row count and all. But understand this thing, that any element, whatever attribute it contains, can be used as a property to do the validations. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll put that property style underscore background hyphen color, and what I'm expecting uh, let me go back here. Okay, I've closed that. Let me go back here and I'll do a rescan, a quick rescan. So I'll be able to fetch that specific value, which we saw that it is in greenish color. So usually what will happen is you'll get the requirement like in that specific way, so that you know what you have to validate it against. Okay. Now, once this is loaded, let's quickly capture that. Okay. So I'll just move this here and I have to click on load all. Okay, so this is style background color, this RGB 61, 220 and 145. Okay, I'll close this, not save this. And here in the test cases, I will put it, this is what I want to validate. Okay, now in some cases, instead of RGB code, you might get hex code as well. So there is a way to change RGB to hex code as well. In case you're interested, let me know as part 2 in the comment section, and I'll make a video on that as well. But you can do that manually also if you want, and you can create a detail somewhere where which color refers to which RGB code. Okay, now let's run this quickly and see if this actually works or not. Okay, so what it is doing, it is going to this specific element and it is basically trying to validate with the specific RGB elements what we have given, and it is essentially validating that it is in greenish color and the exact shade. So this is working fine. We understand how to answer this interview question. Okay. Now let's say they want to go a little further and say that no, I want to not only validate the color, I want to understand that how you can tell me that what font size is used or what font type is used. Okay, now when I say that, I am basically trying to say that this login text what we are seeing, how we can validate that. Okay, now there are certain properties related to that as well. As you can easily guess, there is a little twist in terms of how the format is going to display, which I'm going to explain. So stay along. Now I'll just click on more and load all. Okay, so I'll just write this. This is for background color. Now second thing is for validating the size. There is something called as font size. Okay, and that basically goes with style underscore font underscore size. So if we'll go here, let me just scroll through this. So you find it here, style underscore font underscore size, and you see something called as 16 pixels. Okay, so this is basically the size which is getting validated. So I'll say style underscore font hyphen size. Okay, which is 16px. Okay, so I'll write 60px. Okay. Now another thing is, let's say I want to validate the font type. Okay, I'll just write font type. Okay, now what do you understand by font type? That it is Arial or it is in Calibri or those kind of formats. Okay, now here you will find something called a style underscore font hyphen family. Okay, style underscore font hyphen family. Okay. And you will see here that there are 2 3 different formats mentioned. Okay, now ideally we should only have one format, right? But we'll understand about this. Let's first validate if this thing works fine or not. Okay, so I'll go back to my test case. uh, I'll just close. I'll not save this because I already have this module, and I'll go back to my test case. Here I'll add that extra validation. Okay, so I'll right click. I'll first increase the cardinality so that I'm able to pass all the validations in one specific step. In case you are not aware about that, you can check it out on my video, on my channel. Otherwise, you can create another step. That is also fine. Okay, so you just click on verify here. Okay, and here you click on this bluish icon, and now instead of background color we are going to validate the size. So I'll copy the size specific attribute, which is style underscore font hyphen size, and I'll place it here in the property section. And here I have to write 16 px. Maybe I can copy or type it out, whatever. So I'll mention it here. Okay, now let's run this and see if it is working, and then we'll move to the, then I'll explain you guys the font type section as well. Now, the reason why there are 3 different font types is basically it depends because a certain website or a product is going to be loaded in a lot of different users' machine, and it depends that certain formats might be available, might not be available. So there always needs to be a strategy since it is going to be opened on a lot of different OS, lot of different configurations and all. So in this specific format, what it is saying is this is the preferred format. Okay, and then if this format does not work, this is the fallback format. Now if this is not going to display, this format is going to take into picture, and then again it is a next fallback format and next fallback format. Okay, now in case you have to check that specific format is coming on specific system, then you might have a requirement like that, and you might have a machine set up in that way. So if you have that kind of specific requirement, you can validate it accordingly. Okay, now here the basics is I have just clicked on verify, and here I will put that value. I'll just remove this, put a wildcard here, and we will validate all the uh, default font size and the fallback font sizes. Okay, but that is the reason why different font sizes are coming. Now, this may be asked if the interviewer is really interested in finding out that you have an understanding, then they might ask you that why different formats are also getting displayed here. Okay, now I'll just go into this and I will copy the exact type. Okay, style underscore font hyphen family. Okay, and let's run this finally. So first is validating the background color, second is the size, and third is the font type. Oh, let me just run this. Sorry. Let me make this in the. Now this is going to validate all 3, and uh, this is how you can apply this across your projects wherever you want to validate that. Now this is usually how it is validated. Now just remember about the attribute types, maybe the value sections, and approach in this specific way, because basically the interviewer is trying to understand that do you have an understanding that if you go into the modules, you click on load all, you'll be able to see all those properties, and do you really have a hands-on experience with that or not. I hope that helps, and thank you very much. Do like, share, and subscribe, and have a great day. Bye bye.